Yeah, with some limited effect. It's not a good sign when somebody leaves their cough drops laying around. Or maybe they coughed on it. So do they physically have to recuse themselves from the proceedings? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I guess we didn't have recusals before we went virtual, because I don't remember that happening before we went virtual. I mean, I know when you went virtual, it just went off the screen, but like, I guess we didn't have people that needed to be recused before that I can remember anyways. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was recused.
Like you and I were recused, but that was when we were virtual, so we just dropped off the screen, but like, I don't remember people actually having to leave the room. Yeah. Got about a minute left. Okay. So it's 4 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started, please. Can we have a call to order and a roll call, please?
Board Member Dyer.
Here.
Board Member Goodhue.
Here.
Board Member Hall.
Here.
Board Member Pomeroy.
Here.
And Chair Croman.
Here. All right. Do we have any public appearances? Public wanting to speak on matters of municipal concern? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to announcements.
Chair, we should just check Zoom
Oh, yeah.
to see
Okay.
if anyone wants to speak.
All right. We'll ask again any public appearances from people either in the chambers or online. Okay, seeing none, we'll go to announcements.
I have an announcement. You may have seen the headline in the Pine Cone a couple of weeks ago. My apologies if anybody took any grief for it. The headline itself had a couple of inaccuracies in it. It was about the level 2 proposal that we talked about this last time. One was that it was not voluntary, that it was required, and I thought mentioning incentives to join the program would be enough of a clue that it was voluntary, but apparently not. The second was that we were attacking new houses or trying to control new houses, and this program is really the vast majority of homes that we'd be looking at would be old homes, older homes. Rarely is a new home destroyed and replaced. So those were two inaccuracies I just wanted to clarify. And we are going to have the level 2 discussion here at the next agenda meeting, on the agenda at the next meeting. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, let's move to the consent agenda where we have one item, the Certified Local Government Annual Report for 21-22.
So this is a consent item. You can either approve it, or if you want to pull it for discussion, you could do that as well.
Okay, any comments from the board on the consent agenda, on the local government annual report?
Go ahead, pull it. Request it to be pulled just quickly, just so out.
Okay.
I want to make sure everyone understands what that's about and what it allows us to do. And so, Martin, do you want to talk about that? And is that going to, obviously, part of the benefit is to be able to access grants. And I know we have our continuing historic context statement update that might be another available grant to get. So I'll let you explain it. That's all I was going to pull it for.
So a number of years ago, the city applied to be a certified local government with the State Office of Historic Preservation, and we did receive that designation. And so one of the responsibilities of that designation is to submit this annual report. The report just addresses, what we're doing to preserve historic resources, how we're implementing our historic preservation program. And it does also make available to us grant funding from the state. So as you may remember, we were awarded a grant to update our historic context statement, and we do intend to apply for additional grants for phase 2 of that project. So it is really important that we complete the report annually and submit it to the state.
Great, thanks, Marty.
And as we looked at that, it incorporated things like how many Mills Axe properties we've got and things like that. Does anybody have any questions on that or the initiatives that we're taking? Any comments?
I think one of the things I'd ask for is what continuing education members of the board have done. So that's just an incentive for us in the next year to do more of that, and we can put it into the report for the next year.
Okay. No further discussion. We'll go to orders of business, please. Starting with the Nielsen Market Map Board.
So we need a motion.
To
yeah.
move forward with that. Okay, so
the
do we have a
consent.
motion to approve the Certified Local Government Annual Report as written? Okay,
I'll second it.
second. Can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Dyer,
Yes.
Board Member Goodhue,
Yes.
Board Member Hall,
Yes.
Board Member Pomeroy,
Yes.
Chair Croman.
Yes. Okay. So we can go to the Nielsen Market Map Board.
Thank you. So Sebastian, if I could go ahead and present, thank you so much. Okay, so the next item on your agenda is the Nielsen Market Map Board. As you may recall, last month, at the request of the board, staff had agendized this item to take a look at the map board and see if it qualified as a historic resource. So this here is a 1979 rendering of the Nielsen Brothers Market. The market replaced a gas station that was located on the corner of San Carlos and 7th. The gas station had long had a map board on the property to provide some, directions for people passing through of the Monterey Peninsula. And in the 1980s, the map board was refurbished and painted by Carol Manu and Bill Bates. And so the request was to have staff take a look at this map board to see what level of historical significance it has. So just a brief summary, again, to be eligible for the historic inventory, a property or building should represent at least one theme in the context statement. It shall retain substantial integrity, should be at least 50 years of age, and then it must meet one of the 4 criteria there on the right-hand side. When we brought this to the board last month, the board opted to skip the step 1 staff level review, which was smart, and just go straight to the phase 1 intensive, because we all know and are familiar with Bill Bates locally. So we engaged Meg Clovis. She's a city contracted historic consultant to prepare the phase 1 intensive review. And she found that the map board does meet the criteria for listing. The only problem is it's not quite yet 50 years old. So while the map board itself, as a concept, has been there for well over 50 years, the current rendering is not quite 50. And so for those reasons, we're not able to list it. Just briefly, I want to walk you through the different criteria. Ms. Clovis found that it does represent a theme in the historic context statement. Bill Bates is mentioned. It does have substantial integrity, and it just isn't 50 years old. And then under criteria number 4, it only needs to meet one of the 4, and Ms. Clovis found that it met 2. So it is associated with the lives of someone important locally, which is Bill Bates, and it embodies the distinctive characteristics or represents the work of a master. So had Bill Bates been the sole designer and creator of the map, it may have qualified, but because it was a joint effort with Carol Manu, and unfortunately she's not mentioned in the context statement, it just didn't rise to the level of exceptional importance that it needs to be less than 50 years old. So this is the 50-year rule that is spelled out in our code. And again, it just says that a resource less than 50 must be of exceptional importance. We weren't able to find that, again, due to the joint effort between Bill Bates and Carol Manu. So staff is recommending that the board adopt a resolution issuing a determination of ineligibility, and then also to direct staff to reconsider the map board after 2031 when it reaches 50 years of age. And this decision is appealable to the city council if anyone agrees or disagrees with the outcome this afternoon. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
My concern is that the map would deteriorate further between now and 2031.
For
Okay.
sure.
So should we open it up to see if there's any public comment first, and then we can bring it back to the board? Is there any public comment on this issue?
I know there's somebody on Zoom.
Or on Zoom?
There's Janice.
Oh,
Yes.
go ahead, Janice.
I've been working on the project to restore the map, and the cost is going to be considerable. In order to get grants from most of the different grantors, like the Wyeth Foundation and B of A, the map needs to be historic. The piece of artwork needs to be historic. In the absence of that, we will have to do private funding. And as I said, this is going to be a considerable cost. If we wait until 2031, I would predict that there's not going to be much left of the map because it is peeling away from the wooden surface that it's adhered to right now. So I would appreciate it if you would consider going ahead and designating it as being historic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? If not, we'll close it and go back to the board.
I was just going to ask the question of either Marnie or maybe Janice, if she has the information about if anyone has a real breakdown of the scope of work between Minu and Bill Bates. I mean, it sounded like the basic background was done by Carol Manu, and the cartoons, which seem to be take up most of the image, are done by Bill Bates. Is that correct, or is there a more clear way to analyze that?
Well, based on the report that Meg put together, she found that Carol Manu did the research, the design, and the background, and that Bill Bates' contribution was the cartoons. So it appears, just based on researching the record, that her role was more of a primary role and his secondary.
I guess I go ahead.
And that's, I think that's sort of how we got to this conclusion. I think the report suggests that had Bill Bates been the one who researched and designed and executed this, the outcome may have been different. We may have been able to find exceptional importance, but based on our research, it appears that Carol Manu was the primary designer and executor of this project.
I guess that is a little confusing to me, only because it seems like the imagery you see, which is the artwork itself, apart from who designed it, which is basically a map of Carmel, the imagery was painted by Bill Bates. Is that? I mean, that's my impression of it as I look at it, at least, knowing his style and things.
You know, I think that Kathy had a good point too, as well as Eric. I think we all we want to save this map. We think it's very important in the city. I'm sure the staff agrees with that. And the 50-year age, by 2031, it won't be there anymore if we just leave it, and if we don't get grants to fix it. And I certainly won't be there to repair it. So I just feel like if we could make an exception on the 50 years, which we've done, I believe, in the past, and look at this, it's not like a building that will stand until 2031. It's a billboard. And I'm not sure why Carol Manu isn't a significant name in history is another question. But I just feel like this is something, if we could make an exception to the 50-year rule, because there are other aspects of it that very much qualify as historic. But I'd like to hear responses to that.
I might make one other distinction about the work, which I think may bring it to a level of exceptional, is that I believe this is the only public work by Bill Bates in Carmel. So that in itself would make it exceptional. And the fact that the work itself, despite who designed it, the artwork itself was done by Bill Bates, I think I would actually turn maybe what Marnie said on its head and reverse the order. I would say he's the primary artist, despite who designed it. Not to put down designers, since I'm one, but the execution is important.
No, I'm generally agreeing.
Yeah. I think there's two issues too. I would definitely agree with Eric's point. Secondly, this signpost in some form or another, this map has been there historically for many years before it was in this configuration. I think we a lot of times look at buildings that have been painted 6 times and added on and still consider them historic. So although it wasn't in this configuration, the fact that that map has been there for as long as it has is something that is, I think, needs to be noted. And then secondly, we say that if it was considered exceptional, it would be allowed to be designated outside of the 50-year history. Well, this is kind of like the memorial arch or other things. It's a one-of-a-kind element in Carmel, and it certainly stands on its own. And I think for that reason, I think that the term marking it not as exceptional is pretty arbitrary. And I think that we can go back and say that we feel that this is, for all the reasons that we've raised, this is an exceptional piece of art and also a landmark and also a lot of other things. So I think it sounds to me like we're kind of disagreeing with Meg's assessment. And then if that's true, then we need to consider it, do we want to have it as an exception to the 50-year rule? Any thoughts on that? Or is that kind of what everybody's saying?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I agree with that.
So if we deem it to be of exceptional importance and we want to waive the 50-year rule, then we can make a motion in that regard, right?
So I'm not sure that you're waiving the 50-year rule, but it sounds like what you're doing is you're finding that it is of exceptional importance. And so in your motion, you should include some just specific findings, as you had just deliberated, that it is of exceptional importance and is worth listing on the inventory.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
I'll try. I make a motion that we consider the map of exceptional importance and consider it historic even though it is less than 50 years old.
And you would like to have findings put onto that.
I'll second that.
So the findings might be, if you wanted to include them, the fact that it is the only, I believe, the only public artwork by Bill Bates in the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea, that he was a primary illustrator for the map, and that, perhaps Jordan's point, that the map's been there over 50 years.
And I think it's a unique resource as well.
It is a unique resource.
Mm-hmm.
And people take pictures by it. It is a historic thing that people.
Yeah, I just saw a family in front of it, looking at it, that just on the last weekend.
Yeah. Did I make my motion?
So is that clear enough, Leah?
I had the motion by Board Member Pomeroy and the second by Board Member Goodhue, with the findings that the public map has been here for over 50 years. Bates was a primary illustrator. It's a unique resource. It's the only public map in the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea. Is that everything?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Can we have that vote, please?
Board Member Dyer,
Yes.
Board Member Goodhue,
Yes.
Board Member Hall,
Yes.
Board Member Pomeroy,
Yes.
Chair Croman.
Yes. Okay. The next item we have is the DS 23-006, the Sweet Trust, determination of consistency for the residents located at the southwest corner of Casanova Street and 11th Avenue. Can you have the staff report, please?
Good afternoon. I'll be presenting the Sweet Trust project. This property is the Reginald Markham House. It's a historic property located at the southwest corner of Casanova Street and 11th Avenue. It is a Spanish eclectic Moorish style home constructed in 1927. Interestingly, the home was originally a duplex. It was evaluated in 2002 and added to our local inventory. It was added to the inventory because it's significant under Criterion 3 in the area of architecture as one of the few examples of Moorish-influenced Spanish eclectic residential architecture in Carmel. The proposed project is to demolish an existing 483 square foot garage and storage room and construct a 200 square foot garage in its place. The project also includes a 500 square foot accessory dwelling unit, which is not subject to HRB review. You will have seen it on your project plans, but for the purposes of this evening, we're only looking at the garage. This image shows the detached garage. It doesn't appear detached because there is a landscape wall connecting it to the main house, but the garage fronts 11th Avenue, and it is depicted on the 1930 Sanborn map. So the home was built in 1927, and we have reason to believe a detached garage was built at that time as well. Just this fall, the garage was individually evaluated to determine if it retains integrity, and the Phase 2 historic evaluation completed by city contracted consultant Seth Bergstein found that the garage has lost integrity and for that reason, the proposed project meets the standards. The garage has lost integrity because there's been a very large storage room addition. The 1962 Sanborn map doesn't show the addition. There is actually a record of a 1930s permit describing a shed, so it's quite possible the storage room addition predated 1962, but we don't have a plan of it. We do know that the landscape wall was constructed in 1967 and the garage footprint was expanded to the east. So the whole east wall of the garage is not original. We also know that the roof structure has been replaced and the garage door here. We believe the opening has been modified and this is a non-historic roll-up garage door. There's also been aluminum framed bubble skylights added in the roof. Here we have the Sanborn maps. So here there's an A for auto. So there's always an auto garage here. This is 1962, not showing any addition, but it's possible a rear addition was present at that time. The Sanborn maps aren't 100% accurate. But in looking at location, the garage is in its original location, so no issues with integrity of location. Integrity of design was found substantially altered because of the modifications I described, including a modified garage door entrance, a new garage door, the roof structure changes, the skylights, and then a whole new east wall and that very large rear storage room. In terms of integrity of setting, the surrounding neighborhood remains intact. However, that 1967 landscape wall has altered the spatial relationship as the house and the garage were originally designed completely separate and now there is a wall attaching them. Likewise, integrity of materials has been substantially altered with the replaced roof, the addition, the windows and skylights. The stucco finish is different between the original garage and that east wall and the storage addition. Similarly with workmanship, the scope of the alterations and the reapplied stucco doesn't match, and this has compromised integrity of workmanship. With the feeling of a very modest and detached building has been compromised because it's nearly doubled in size and there's a landscape wall. We don't look at association in this case because the property is not significant for a specific event or person, just for architecture. These are some photos of the garage. You can see the skylights, the roll-up door. You can't see the cement foundation and French drains. We have drywall. This is the storage room. Similar conditions here. Here we have a comparison between our existing garage and storage room and what is proposed. You'll see it's obviously going to be smaller in size, but also it will be moved 3 feet off the west property line. So currently the garage sits right on the property line, and they are proposing to move it 3 feet east to comply with our current code standards. These elevations show the existing versus proposed garage. Very subtle change here. You'll notice the new garage will be slightly taller, just over a foot taller, and there will be a new wood garage door. This section of landscape wall, which is not original, will also be replaced in kind. This is just looking at the addition from the east. So the ADU is pictured here, but we're just focusing on the garage here and here. In the Phase 2 historic evaluation, Seth looked at our 10 standards and found the project consistent with standards 2, 3, 4, and 10. And then standard 9, he also found it consistent with one recommendation. I'm going to skip straight to the one with the recommendation, and we can go back if you have questions, but the standard with a recommendation is standard 9. which reads, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new constructions will not destroy historic materials, features, or spatial relationships. New work shall be differentiated and compatible. So staff agrees that the stucco should have a slightly different appearance or application method to allow for differentiation. It shouldn't match exactly, because then someone wouldn't know that it is a contemporary feature. In summary, the standards analysis summarizes that the house itself is really the primary resource of this property, and the garage has been altered to the extent that it no longer retains integrity, and the new project is consistent. So staff recommends that you do issue a determination of consistency for the demolition of the existing 483 square foot detached garage and storage room, and construction of a new 200 square foot detached garage at the Reginald Markham House at Southwest Casanova and 11th. The architect, Justin Pauly, is with us this afternoon, as are the property owners and the neighbors to the west, who are here to support the project.
Great.
Happy to answer any questions.
Any immediate questions before we open to the public? Okay, let's open to the public for comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this?
Good afternoon. I'm Justin Pauly. I'm the architect for the project, and I'm just here to answer questions. That was a very thorough review from Catherine, but just reiterate a couple of points from that presentation that the original house, which was a duplex, there's no plans anywhere within the city's possessions. The permit record is vague. It was sort of one-line entries into the city's records. We do have those Sanborn maps. They indicate the 11 by 17 garage. The 1927 permit indicates a residence and a garage, but there was also a garage at the lower level of the main residence at that time. So even there, it's a little unclear. Again, we have the 1935 permit for a 10 by 10 shed, which went on the back of the garage. And then we really have nothing with the exception of the wall from 1967 until we get to 1975, where we have a kitchen remodel, which as a part of that remodel, they redrew the site plan, and again, it depicts an 11 by 17 garage with a 10 by 10 addition on the back. From there, we somehow arrived at a point in history where the 11 by 17 garage became a 14 by 17 garage, and the 10 by 10 shed somehow became a 12 by 20 shed. So we're not sure how it happened, we're not sure when it happened, but it was not done in 1927. Our existing desire with this project was to remodel the existing garage and raise its roof. I just think it's an important point to be made that because the house was an existing non-conforming condition in terms of its square footage, we were not allowed to touch the existing garage without bringing it into compliance, and so that's how we arrived at. You may be wondering why we've got a big garage and we're building a smaller garage. It just because the big garage that we have has a very low ceiling. It's not a real, it's not a functional space with the way the garage door is jammed over, but the minute we touch that garage, we have to bring the property into compliance, and we can't do it. So that's why we're going to build the 10 by 20 garage. So that's all. Again, thanks. This has been sort of a bear of a project for staff, I know. We've got an ADU, we've got a historic project, we've got sort of a lack of good records on the house, but they've been really good to help us out, and we've worked through everything, and hopefully we'll get permission to go ahead and make this alteration to the house. We appreciate your time.
Any questions for Justin? Okay.
Actually, I have a question. This is Nancy Toomey. The view that was shown in one of Catherine's slides that wasn't the facing the garage, but a side view, was really confusing to me. Is there any chance that could be bought up so that I could understand it?
Yes. Sebastian, could we show the council screen?
while they're bringing that up, I think what might have been confusing to that is that you were seeing the ADU that we're not discussing.
Or were you
Yeah.
referencing a photograph?
But, no, not a photograph.
The ADU.
It was a line drawing. That one, I have no,
Yes.
what's what here?
So on the right-hand side, you see the light-colored box with the arched door. It's about a third of the overall elevation. That's the garage. The taller piece with the 3 French doors is the ADU, and
Got it.
we've intentionally differentiated that from the main house by cladding it in stone so that it's
Okay.
readily identifiable that it's not part of the historical structure.
Got it. Okay, so it's the kind of white or area that is the garage part.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you. It was confusing. Thank you.
I have one quick question. You said the landscape wall is going to be rebuilt. Is that simply because when you demolish the garage, you won't be able to retain that wall?
Yeah, site access for building the ADU, there's not going to be any way to get into the back courtyard.
Got it. Okay, any other public comment? Okay, we'll close the public comment then. Board members, any discussion?
I guess I have one question, maybe not specifically related, but 67 is over 50 years old, and how do we determine historic status for something that's 80 years old and then 50 years old? You know what I'm saying? Why is that not historic too?
Seth addressed this in his standards analysis, and he made the decision, and staff agrees that the alterations wouldn't have been deemed appropriate, and because they were performed piecemeal, several different alterations over decades, and we don't have a good record of them, and they did alter the spatial relationship between the garage and the home. He felt they were not appropriate changes and did not acquire historic significance in their own right.
So they didn't meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic. Thank you.
Well, it seems to me the designation is based on the 1927 structure. I don't see how any additions would qualify as being, it doesn't make sense.
The designation is, yes, focused on the 1927 home, and there is mention of the fact that there is a garage, but the landscape wall, the expanded footprint, and then the rear storage room addition, it is understood not to have gained its own significance.
Thank you.
But I was just going to say, what it allows, it seems to me, is the construction of the new garage that's more functional for the owners of the house, and it basically is in keeping with what was there, and so they're able to build something new that, since it wasn't historic in the first place, they can really match it to and make it functional. But it basically will stay very similar to what you see today. So I'm definitely in support of the project. I have one divergent question, which is, I think it'd be helpful for the board to understand the relationship of ADUs to the Historic Preservation Ordinance and how they interact, and how, is there any exceptions in dealing with the state ADU laws for historic properties?
The city is developing its own ADU ordinance, and I'm sure we'll be coming to you to present that. Right now, we are working off state law, which does not allow the Historic Resources Board to comment or approve or reject accessory dwelling unit designs, particularly because this property is not listed on the California register, and we don't have our own ordinance. So for those reasons, we likely would have said that this ADU is compatible, but we aren't making that determination this evening.
So it might be possible.
More information to come on ADUs, but for today.
So I understand the state law talks about the California register, but not about local register.
Not about the local inventory.
And so does the city see it possible that historic properties are putting into the new ADU law for our jurisdiction, whether they can include some exceptions for historic properties or some requirement for appliance of the Secretary of Interior standards or something like that.
I can't comment on the ordinance being developed without, I think the lawyers still need to review it and such, but I
Sure.
promise we'll be coming to you with the changes, how it differs from the state law we've been using.
Okay, thank you. And I would just say, that being said, I'm really happy that the architect decided to display, because I've seen some presentations of ADU plans where it's a big X through the drawing, and I appreciate Justin providing the elevations of the ADU, and I appreciate the fact that he's doing it so sensitively and he's applying the Secretary of Interior standards even though he's not required to. So thank you for that. It's a very nice design.
Right, and the new structure is compatible with the neighbors' desires too, which makes everybody happy, so. All right, do we have any other discussion, or is there a recommendation to move forward with this? Can we get the slide that has the recommendation on it, the last slide, please?
Yes. Oops.
I can do that. I will make a motion to adopt a resolution on DS 23-006, issuing a determination of consistency with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, demolition of an existing 483 square foot detached garage and storage room, and construction of a new 200 square foot detached garage at the historic Reginald Markham House, located at the southwest corner of Casanova and 11th in the single-family residential district.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Dyer,
Yes.
Board Member Goodhue,
Yes.
Board Member Hall,
Yes?
Board Member Pomeroy,
Yes.
Chair Croman.
Yes. Great. Okay, and then the next item on our agenda is HE 22-294, the consideration of a historic evaluation phase 1 determination for the guard house, southwest corner of Mission Street and 12th Avenue. Can we have the staff summary, please? Yes, sir.
And I just want to say I'm going to recuse myself on this one and leave the room because I've been working with Dr. Schneider and his family on this potential project.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank
Bye.
you.
All right, moving on to historic evaluation 22-294 Schneider, which you, I'm sure, remember from our meeting last month. You'll be considering adding an individual property located southwest of Mission and 12th to the inventory. As you recall, the city contracted consultant Margaret Clovis conducted an initial review, which concluded that there was enough to warrant an intensive evaluation, and then the intensive evaluation found the property to be significant and retain integrity. The Historic Resources Board considered this item on January 23rd. There were 2 second opinions presented. We will go over those again. Ultimately, there were 2 tie votes. A motion to list the property failed, and a motion to find it ineligible failed. And the board voted to continue the item until we had a 5th member. So even though we don't have our 5th member with us today, we'll still be rehearing the item. And you may choose to list it, may choose to find it ineligible, or you may choose to refer it to the council. So we'll get started. This is the guard house built circa 1925. The architect and builder is unknown. We don't have an original permit or plans. We know the original owners were Henry and Martha Guard. Henry worked for the Carmel Street Department. This property has been deemed ineligible in the past, in 2008, and that because that determination expired, that's what kicked off this process by the property owner's application. Margaret Clovis completed her DPR review, and there have been some revisions that we'll talk about. However, her ultimate finding that this property is significant for architecture and retains integrity did not change. Going back to 2008, the main reason the property was found ineligible at that time was because, for 2 points. There was a claim that the sliding wood windows were not characteristic of the 1920s period. There was also a claim that it is a vernacular cottage, not associated with important people. It's not distinctive. Just to address those quickly, the windows are single pane wood windows with brass hardware. There's both sliding and casement windows. It's possible the windows have been replaced. We just don't have a record of it. So the DPR form says they are likely replacements, and even so, they were replaced in keeping with the standards. And then we've done additional research on sliding windows, and we found that they are typical in Carmel on Craftsman buildings, interestingly. They're also listed in the context statement. So this property is significant for its architecture. It has these character-defining features, being 1 story. It has a U-plan, which is somewhat rare. It has wood shingle siding. It has sliding wood windows, also some casement windows. It has a Dutch door, which we believe is a replacement based on the type of wood. It has a clinker brick chimney, gabled roof forms, and has that classic 1-car detached garage. Going back, these Sanborn maps show that the footprint of the cottage is unaltered. There have been alterations, including a re-roof. There's a new foundation on the garage. We believe there are replacement windows, and there's several cosmetic features like shutters, window boxes, gutters and light fixtures, etc., that are not original. There's also a rear deck and a rear exit door and landing that we believe are later additions. The DPR form indicates that this property does retain integrity. It retains integrity of location, design, and setting, and feeling. However, integrity of materials and workmanship have been compromised, though not removed altogether. To retain overall integrity, you don't need to have every single aspect retained. So the assessment was that overall, comprehensively, the property still has integrity. And it has these character-defining features, which we'll go through one by one. These are the features listed in the context statement for what is a craftsman house. So this is where that finding of significance came from. Horizontality of proportions, low-pitched overhanging roof with exposed rafters. It has shingle siding. There's wood and brick. There's a U-shaped plan, which encloses the patio. There is an original porch, pictured at left, outdoor spaces and windows in generally horizontal bands, tripartite windows. The context statement describes, extended lintels and sills. These windows only have extended lintels. That's the bottom part of the window opening. Excuse me, the sill is the bottom part. The lintel is the top. It has both sliding and casement windows. And this is a quote from the context statement about what is Carmel's early 1920s architecture. Simple. It has shingles, it has a Dutch door, it has a detached single-car garage, usually front gabled with board and batten siding, which this garage does. So we went through second opinions in detail in January, kind of point for point. We're not going to go over that again, but those letters were provided as attachments, and we have individuals here to speak to those again today. Since the meeting, the DPR form was slightly revised. The revisions include an update on the style identifier from a pure craftsman to what we're calling a vernacular craftsman. There's also been added contextual photos and just some additional descriptive detail added to the form. So if anyone's wondering what is a vernacular craftsman, Initially, the construction date of 1925 leads itself to a craftsman style. That was really the heyday of craftsmen. However, this home may be more appropriately identified as vernacular with craftsman features. And the term vernacular is typically used in instances of local architectural eccentricities or modest interpretations of a style. And we feel like this home falls into that latter description. The label vernacular has been assigned to 34 buildings on our inventory, with construction dates ranging from 1888 to 1950. So there's certainly precedent for using this term. There's also precedent for combining it with other styles like Tudor influenced vernacular, vernacular Scandinavian, vernacular storybook, etc. This is an example of a vernacular craftsman listed on our inventory. It's on Monteverde. There's our circa 2002 photo of it. It certainly has brackets and a door hood, exposed rafters, those shingles. As I go through the next few slides, the staff takeaway was that there are many homes listed on our inventory that lack, that don't have every single listed feature. So the fact that the guardhouse lacks, say, brackets, isn't a deal breaker. These are vernacular homes currently listed on our inventory. So the photo on the left, say, yes, we have a porch, but you can't see the chimney. Again, here, the homes may have some features and not others. All of these photos were taken from the street of what is visible of the facade. The home on the left actually has steel windows. Most of the examples are simple one-story cottages. The photo on the left has a nice close-up of what sliding windows look like. The photo on the right, this is the facade. There's no handsome entry porch. There are also extensive alterations that have occurred to some of these properties that are still on our inventory. The photo on the left has an altered roof form there over the door. The photo on the right, the railing is not original. The photo on the left, is again lacking a porch or lacking brackets. Here, the photo on the left has a very nice shaped fascia board, and it has those decorative muntins in the window that we like to see. And then the photo on the right has a large second-story addition and doesn't really have the decorative muntins that you might expect with a craftsman. So these photos are just shown to illustrate the range and kind of answer that question that was brought up last meeting of what is of a style versus what is a good example of a style. And all staff really has to go off of is what has been previously listed. We think that what is listed on the inventory was previously found to be a good example. So those are just photos that we were going off of. So staff does recommend that you adopt the resolution, adding this individual property located at the southwest corner of 12th and Mission to the Carmel inventory. Alternative 1 is to determine it is ineligible, and we would request that you adopt findings as to why. Alternative 2, if a motion to list it or find it ineligible results in a tie, you may make a motion to refer this to the council. So I do believe the property owner is with us virtually, and the property owner's consultants as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So I know we saw in our packets and in correspondence that we saw Meg Clovis's late-breaking additions to her her review, and certainly since those were so late in getting to us, the request has been made to provide the owner and his representatives and other dissenters some additional time unless staff has significant disagreement with that. I would recommend that we let them take the time that they need to walk us through this. Is that okay? Okay, so let's open it to the public for their comment, please. Dr. Schneider, you want to start off, or you want would you like someone else to? I think you're on mute.
Oh, could I? Hi, my name is Sam Schneider. I'm Dr. Schneider's son. If I could talk first, I'm currently at work, so I have a little bit of time. But I just want to say I watched my dad work so hard over the course of his career, and it was his dream to always have a house near the beach, and to have enough room for family to come and live with him as he retires there. And I'm also a general surgeon. I'm currently still in training up in Washington, and I hope to move back to California and maybe plan to practice close to where family is. So I would hope he was trying to enlarge the house to have, in the future, to have family there and be with him. And I just want to say I would also love to have that space and that room to move and visit and possibly work down there. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that. Go ahead, Dr. Schneider. I think you're still on mute, though. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm the homeowner. First, I'd like to respond to a couple of points raised by some of the board members during last month's discussion. Ms. Goodhue, I think you queried whether I could still build an addition even if the house is deemed historic. That answer is no. Historic determination on my corner lot prevents an addition on either Mission or on the sides facing either Mission or 12th, which is the majority of the property. If the property is deemed historic, the only allowable spot would be in the back or on the far side. And Eric Dyer tells me there's not enough room on either of those two sides to put the addition within the setback requirements. Second, Ms. Hall. My house really does fit the level 2 designation, and my addition would be in keeping with the level 2 proposals. My intention and my promise is to honor the existing house. I like charming old houses, which is why I bought this one. I want Eric Dyer to design it so the new blends seamlessly with the existing, and one can't tell there was an addition. My current house in Hillsborough is a charming old brick colonial. When I added on to it 25 years ago, I had the architect make the addition match the existing. We even reused the old bricks because there weren't any new ones that would match. It turned out really well. I want to do something similar here in Carmel. When this addition is completed, I hope people walk by and say, well, what a charming old house. Going to the historical evaluation, 3 of the 4 historians who evaluated my house deemed it not historic. Mr. Dyer also told me he thinks it's not historic, but he recused himself because he's my architect. Ms. Gualtieri sent it well in 2008. This vernacular cottage cannot be associated with important persons or events, nor does it embody the distinctive architectural characteristics of a type, period, region, or method of construction. It does not represent the work of a master. Mr. Stevie and Mr. Kirk agree, and you will hear from them shortly. In order to qualify as historic, my house must be a good example of a particular style recognized by the city of Carmel, not average or poor or mediocre or modest, but good. I believe Ms. Wallace referred to my house as a modest example. It needs to be good. Responding to the points made at the hearing last month, Ms. Clovis issued an amended report retracting her original determination that the house is an example of the craftsman style, and she now characterizes it as a vernacular craftsman cottage and as an example of working class housing. Vernacular means it was built with what was cheap and readily available. Vernacular craftsman is not a particular style and is not recognized as such by the city. Yes, vernacular cottages have been added to the historic inventory, but that, I believe, is mainly because of who lived there, not because of the architecture. No one important lived in my house. Likewise, working class housing is also not a style or recognized as historic by the city. The main point I'd like to make here is that my house, though charming, is not a good example of anything and is not eligible for the historic inventory. My hope is that one or both of the members who voted to make it historic last month will reconsider the matter now and vote the house as ineligible for a historic listing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments from the public? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
My name is Anthony Kirk. I'm an architectural historian. And as you know, in September of 2022, May Clovis evaluated the house, the southwest corner of Mission Street and 12th Avenue. She stated in the evaluation that the house was eligible for listing in the Carmel Historic Inventory, quote, because it is a good example of the craftsman style, which characterizes Carmel's architectural legacy during the town's formative years. Both Kent Seavey, who held the position currently occupied by May Clovis on several occasions, agreed with me, and he opposed adding the property to the Carmel inventory, as did I. In February of this year, Ms. Clovis completed a heavily redacted evaluation of the house, which runs to slightly more than twice the length of her original assessment. Her conclusion, however, remains identical to her original finding, though there is a critical twist. On the first page of her evaluation, she states that the, quote, vernacular craftsman style guardhouse, end quote, was built in 1925. By the time she reaches page 6, she writes that the residence, quote, is a good example of the vernacular cottage style with craftsman features typical of Carmel's architectural legacy during the town's formative years. In essence, Ms. Clovis says the cottage has two styles. The first is vernacular craftsman, which she states on page 2 is the architectural style of the residence. There's a part of the DPR form that asks what the style is, and she says that it is vernacular craftsman. And she then, on page 6, goes on to say it's a good example of the vernacular cottage style with craftsman features, typical of Carmel's architectural legacy during the town's formative years. In essence, Ms. Clovis is saying that the cottage has two styles. The first is vernacular craftsman, which she states on page 2 is the architectural style of the residence. But she also writes that it is a vernacular cottage with craftsman features. Which is it? I have no idea. It's impossible to tell. The Carmel Historic Context Statement, first published in 2008 after 2 revisions, makes absolutely no mention whatsoever of the vernacular craftsman style, though it references on numerous occasions the craftsman style, as well as vernacular architectural forms, vernacular construction, and vernacular cottages. The vernacular craftsman style is also not mentioned in more than 1,000 pages of Cyril Harris's Dictionary of Architecture and Construction, nor is there a single reference to this so-called style in Virginia Savage McAllister's A Field Guide to American Houses. The cottage was originally evaluated in 2008 by Catherine Gualtieri, who was the former California State Historic Preservation Officer, and Susan Lehman, an experienced Santa Cruz architectural historian. The 2 women found the property to be ineligible for listing in the California Register of Historical Resources, and they referred to the house as a vernacular cottage. Needless to say, anyone strolling along 12th Avenue in Carmel would have no idea that the house is an example of craftsman architecture, as Miss Clovis originally characterized its style. There's not a single element of the house that is typical of the style, apart from the character of the roof and the one-story height of the house, features that are typical of countless houses built in various styles. Over the year, a half dozen or so architectural historians have looked at the house and pronounced it not significant as a craftsman-style house. Among these architectural historians was Enid Sales, who I met on a couple of occasions, though I didn't know her particularly well. She was the first woman in the state to pass the test for a contractor's license and the first chairwoman of the Carmel Historic Resources Board. She was a fierce advocate for the preservation of craftsman architecture, willing to resort to lawsuits when necessary to preserve a historic building. In my opinion, the house is, as Catherine Gualtieri said, a vernacular cottage. The house is not a good example of craftsman architecture, nor of any other style, including the so-called style that May Clovis attaches to it. It does not appear to be eligible for listing in the California Register of Historical Resources. In my opinion, it should not be placed in the Carmel Inventory of Historic Resources. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I will attempt to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Kurt, and thanks for your attachment. That was a great asset in providing some context. Does anybody have any comments from Mr. Kurt? Okay, thank you. Mr. Seavey?
Chairman Cronin and Commissioners, Kent Seavey, Historic Preservation Consultant. Age alone does not qualify a property for historic designation. However, SECRA under PRC section 5024.1 does. And the criteria for that significance is addressed in that section. It asks, did any event of importance to the region, state, or nation occur on the property? No. Did anyone important to the region, state, or nation occupy the property during the productive period of their lives? No. Does the building represent an important architectural type, period, or method of construction? Or is it a good example of the work of a noted architect or master builder? The answer is no. Small n maybe, but no. The criteria also asks, is the property likely to yield information significant to the understanding of the areas of history? And that answer is no. Eligibility for historic listing rests on the twin factors of historic significance and integrity to be considered for listing in almost any register, including yours. Mr. Guard worked in town, but he doesn't show up in the 1930. He doesn't show up in the 1933 or the 1935 or the 39 directories for Carmel-by-the-Sea. The loss of integrity, if sufficiently great, will overwhelm any significance a resource may possess and render it ineligible for listing. Likewise, this is from the code, a resource can have complete integrity, but if it lacks significance, it must also be considered ineligible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that off and then move back to the board for discussion.
If I may, I'll just make one comment.
Please.
The photos included in the revised DPR and the photos shown this evening, those are all properties significant only for architecture. There was no significant for a person. That's the only comment.
Understood. And I think before we start our discussion, I think Catherine's done a great job of kind of walking us through the house. We understand that the porches can be adjusted in the back and those aren't part of the original configuration. So I recommend that we focus strictly on the parts of the house that we know are under consideration versus, things like the porches. We've heard that the doors have all been replaced, the windows, some may be original, some may not be original, but let's try and focus on the integrity of the structure itself and how we feel about that within the historic context.
I think this is an example of what houses in Carmel used to be. I came here early enough and had friends living in houses very much like that. Architecture here has changed a great deal, and I would be very sorry to see this example go. I mean, that's just where I stand on this.
I'll think aloud here. It's complicated. I've thought a lot about this back and forth. I feel very much on the fence in many regards. I agree that this is a cottage that is very much Carmel, and in that sense, worth saving. Dr. Schneider is planning on saving that house and adding on to it. I know that we're supposed to be looking just at the historic aspect of the house itself. I can't help but be influenced by the fact that it will remain that house, and if it's deemed non-historic, I don't want historic status to be a punitive factor for people. I think that the staff has done an excellent job of countering, actually, some of the comments and making an incredible argument for why it is historic. Enid Sales didn't think it was historic. That also sways me because I knew Enid, and if something, she was very into history, as I am, and she didn't find it historic. Kent Seavey has a tremendous, I don't know Mr. Kirk, but Kent certainly has a background, substantial background in historic cottages. And I also thought, well, they could build an ADU if they really want family, which is also not something I'm supposed to be concerned about. So I've been bouncing all of this around in my head, and is it true that they couldn't really add on to the back and still keep it historic? I find myself kind of in the same position now that I was last time. I don't think that the council, if we send it on to the council, that they will really probably do as thorough a job of, I mean, nothing against the council, but I think that we probably are in a better position, let me put it that way, to determine whether it is historic or not ourselves, and probably should bite the bullet and make a decision today. That would be my thought.
The house does have some historic characteristics, and it's old, but it has been altered. And there are better examples of craftsman cottages in Carmel.
Yeah, I think everyone has expressed probably things that were elements of what we're all thinking. I think, Carol, I really appreciate what you said and the kind of mental gymnastics that you've been playing with yourself. I've been thinking the same thing. However, I will say a couple things. I mean, I think that the staff did do a great job, and I commend them for that, but I also think that those other historians have really helped us see the craftsman inventory in context. And there are a large number of craftsman houses that are much better examples existing in Carmel. Also, Meg Clovis, who I think we all tremendously respect and appreciate, went and really revised her assessment. And I mean, we can't just go and revise assessments because we're trying to prove something. And I'm not saying that's what she did. I think she probably looked even harder at it the second time. And I agree that we kind of have this mixed baby. It's part craftsman, it's part cottage, and even where I agree very much with Esther about how this is probably a nice historical Carmel home, I mean, that's not what we're evaluating. We're evaluating, is this a good or better example of the Craftsman model, and that, you know, between all the revisions that have been done to it and all the adjustments that have been done to it and the desires of the current owner, I really strongly would ask the dissenters from last time to concur, and I think in my opinion, we should declare this home desirable and lovely and important, but not historic. Any other thoughts?
I think that, and again, I'm supposed to be looking specifically at the historic nature of this, the fact that Dr. Snyder has promised to, and I will haunt you, Dr. Snyder, if you don't do this, has promised to keep any addition in the same style and respect the historic or the nature of the cottage itself, would lead me to lean toward what you're talking about, Jordan.
Okay. Can we have the resolution page back up, please?
Sebastian, could we flip to the resolution, please? Thank you.
And I don't mean to quell any further discussion. I just want us to be able to look at that to see where we're at. This is not the correct one, it's the next one.
There you go.
Perfect.
Sorry about this.
No problem.
We'll get there. Through the photos. There you go.
So further discussion or recommendation? We have, last month we voted on 3 different occasions. We voted to designate it as a historic property, to designate it as a non-historic property, and then our third vote was to bring it back to this this forum, this occasion of our board meeting.
One more thought I guess I had was that Mr. Dyer has been on the Historic Resources Board longer than any of the rest of us, and also Catherine Gualtieri as well. And I do respect their opinions, and know that Eric certainly knows what historic is and how to keep an addition complementary to a historic house.
Great. Kathy, would you like to make a recommendation?
I would recommend that we find the house not historic,
So ineligible for listing.
ineligible for listing on the historic register.
And if we do that, we have to determine, or at least discuss why we feel that that's the case.
The reasons being, no one important lived there. We don't know the architect. The house has been altered. And as we saw in the slides, there are better examples of craftsman cottage architecture in Carmel.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second that motion. Can we have a vote? It's deja vu.
Board Member Goodhue?
No.
Board Member Hall?
Yes.
Board Member Pomeroy?
Yes.
Chair Croman?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Under duress.
I know. Sometimes.
I'd like to thank all of you.
I was threatening with my finger.
Okay, thank you. So we have a director's report?
Well, thank you. So I probably should have mentioned during announcements, but I wasn't quite prepared at that time, to welcome back Eric Dyer. to the Historic Resources Board. This is his first meeting back with us.
Thank you.
So we're glad to have you back. And then just a couple of updates. So tomorrow, February 28th at 5:30 p.m., the Housing Ad Hoc Committee is hosting a community meeting to discuss the housing element update. The meeting will be held here in the council chambers at City Hall, and everyone is welcome to attend. You can do so either in person or online via Zoom. And if you're looking for the Zoom link, it is available on our website under Government and Meetings. So we are encouraging everyone to come and participate and share their thoughts about the future of housing in the village. Also, a draft of our updated residential and commercial design guidelines have been released for public review. These went out on February 9th, and it is the first draft. You can find copies of those on our website under Departments, Planning Division, and Long Range Planning Initiatives. The steering committee that's been set up for this project will be meeting on Wednesday at 9 a.m. To give feedback on the guidelines. And again, we're encouraging the public to participate and provide input. That meeting will again be held here in the council chambers at City Hall. And there will be a community meeting also that will be scheduled in the very near future to receive additional feedback from the community. And a date has not been set yet, but as soon as it is, we will share that with you. And then lastly, on March 15th at 4 p.m., the city's going to be hosting a community workshop to review the draft wireless communications ordinance. So that meeting, again, held here in the council chambers at City Hall, and we will offer virtual attendance via Zoom as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
That's all?
Any other business before adjournment?
I guess I can add one announcement. We have, as part of the AIA Monterey Bay Board of Directors, I have been organizing a lecture series on housing, and the first one was February 9th, and it was great to see Marnie and Leah and Catherine there. And it takes place at Sandbox Sand City, and the next one is going to be March 16th at 6 o'clock. And if you go to aiamontereybay.org, you'll get more information about that. And we're also putting the video of the first lecture, which I think was really informative, more on housing policy and what the state's doing online, so you'll be able to watch that and catch up if you missed it. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. If there's no other business, then I would like to adjourn this session. I thank the board members and the staff.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good meeting.